This series legitimately might be one of the biggest surprises that I've had in a while because I expected to like this, but I ended up just absolutely loving this series for so many reasons, and we're going to talk about those in this video. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about the Coldfire trilogy, which includes Black Sun Rising, When True Night Falls, and the final volume, Crown of Shadows. And these are, not only did I really love the series, but this has some of my absolute just favorite cover art in general. This whole series, and I'm so happy that I have these full-size hardcovers I got from Thina on this too, which again, that's just eternally grateful because loved the series. Love this cover art. I want to hopefully maybe find a full size cover of Black Sun Rising, but still have that for now. And This series is just so many great things. And I cannot wait to talk more about. So starting with Black Sun Rising, because that was the book that just ended up really blowing me away. And This series in general, the base setup and what we get in Black Sun Rising is we see in the prologue this person he's the Neo Count, so very important and influential figure, and he ends up sacrificing his whole family in order to gain power. And so that's kind of the kickoff of the start that we have here. And the base premise is humanity went off looking for different worlds and found this one, and this was one of the few that was actually deemed habitable. But the problem is the world is inhabited by this forces that are called the Fae, that end up like changing things or reacting to what you think. And so what you believe and things like that are really, really actually important to the world and can change things based on that type of thing, and is the setup here. And Then there's a religion that's set up specifically to try to create order and everything, and so we have that as a really important aspect as well, with religion being very, very important, and belief being very important because of the fact that, yeah, if you just go around thinking crazy things can happen. So already really interesting premise, really interesting idea, and humanity sort of losing science in some ways, losing technology because it's not necessarily reliable on this world, because this is a world where you don't have predictable, provable science, things like that. It's more about belief and ideas. And So already some really interesting things to discuss there. I've always enjoyed the exploration of religion and sci-fi and fantasy, and the exploration here in this world where it's even more important from the perspective of these people with the church and one of the reasons it was set up, but the complications of it as well, and the different pieces there I find fascinating, and just sort of the ideas again of belief and what you think is going to happen actually being really important, and interacting with, again, the Fae. The idea of sacrifice is really important, but especially in the first book, and you get it kind of throughout a little bit, but especially in the first book, the theme that was explored quite heavily that I don't really recall reading anything else that ever explored was the idea of vulnerability. And All of the characters had their own ways in which they were vulnerable and their own ways in which they react to vulnerability in others, but it all played into their motivations. I talked about this in my pretty in-depth video about the first book, Black Sun Rising. And I won't really get into to spoilers here or anything. I'm talking about the series as a whole. But you have one character who's extremely vulnerable, and you have another character who preys on vulnerability, and you have another character who feels like they need to protect the vulnerable. And all of them are dealing with their own different reasons for vulnerability. And the idea there's some other characters that we see, and it's the way that they react because of their own perceived vulnerability as well is really important, both on the quote unquote good and bad side. But the thing here is that the characters are very complicated as well, and you don't really get good and evil per se, because even though we have a church, and we have demons, and we have magic, and one of our main characters is a priest, one of our other main characters is a like quasi immortal vampire sort of guy who's definitely like a villain, but we put them together, that dynamic, for the record, too, between the two main characters of Damien and Gerald, which are the opposite of what you would think for which character is which if you haven't read the book. But their dynamic is also just so fascinating to explore throughout. But we're exploring these ideas in such a big way throughout the series that I just found fascinating. And as you continue into the series, despite this being sci fantasy, I talked about a bit, where obviously it was technologically advanced spacefaring humanity coming to the planet, but it feels much more fantasy, especially in the first two books, because the fact that you're traveling and you're doing kind of more fantasy plots. But again, it's like you almost forget sometimes that it's not just a pure fantasy, but you have things like technology and guns. And the third book felt almost weird because it was felt more on the traditional sci-fi side in a lot of ways, while also having some big fantasy elements. But because you spend some time in places where, you'll have something like, oh, call the police and have them come over, and you have more like basic normal things in a city. And I feel like for me, I had dug so far into the fascinating sort of fantasy world building that my brain would forget sometimes that it's sci-fi. Although, like I said, the author does kind of remind you. But there are some interesting things too. And book two, being very general once again, delves a lot into the idea of harnessing belief and what can really be done with harnessing belief, which again plays into the ideas of this world where what you believe and what you perceive can very much be real and come to be real, and belief and perception and mental control over its things really important. And those are elements that I have seen in different ways done. One thing it did make me think of is Michael R. Fletcher's Beyond Redemption, which takes that to an extreme, and like that's the main thing it's exploring. Is it's a world where what you believe is in fact true. And so it reminded me a bit of that, and I thought a really interesting way as well. And it's exploring that idea. And of course, like you have, like, for example, things like the Wheel of Time in the World of Dreams, Talon, where what you think about can become real. And this is again not quite as like immediate and literal as either of those two. It's more of a sort of mystical way, I feel like, is as the only way I can think to say it, that you get in this series. But we explore that a lot there. And then book three, again, taking a lot of these themes together, it felt like such a just really great, for me, conclusion. I think it did a really fantastic job tying things up, still leaving a ton open for you to think about with the world as well, but with tying up the themes. And especially, I felt like it deals a lot with fear again, and that plays in, I think, with vulnerability, with belief, because that can go both ways. Things that you're afraid of, and it really brought it to a really fantastic close, in my opinion, that just worked really well for me. There were some elements in the third book that were introduced that I didn't like quite as much as the other books, because I mostly just liked what we were doing and who we were following here. So there's an additional POV that I think plays a very important part, but also without having them introduced earlier, it's kind of that double-edged sword. Like if you would have introduced them earlier, I don't feel like it would have worked as well. But also have introducing a new character in the third book is a little bit tough in some ways as well too. So while there were some things there in that book that I didn't like quite as much, it also was just so good for what it accomplished as the final book in a series that I still absolutely loved it as well. And again, this is just a book where there was so much to dig into with the themes, with the characters, and I really liked those aspects. But if you know me, you know I'm a world building focused reader, and that's ultimately what just made me fall in love with this series so hard, is because the world is just absolutely fascinating. It is this truly alien world, and there are creatures on the world as well. You have all of the different world building where you have the history of humanity, and there is a prequel novella, or there's a prequel novel and like a prequel short. I haven't read either of those yet, but I want to. Book two, the prologue has like is an excerpt of what later became the prequel novel of some early on things that happened, and so I'm very curious to find out more here. But you have this huge amount of depth and history, a lot of the themes around exploring all of these different things and ideas that play into the world. But at its core, it's just the idea that sort of the science versus the more magical type of thing with this world. everything that's set up there, and you get more and more. You dig in deeper each book, which is also something that I love. You start off, you're thrown into a very foreign world. And I think some people probably with the first book might bounce off a little bit because it's hard to kind of get in and see what's going on. But once you're there, you just dig in a little bit more. And you start with book one, you have these big things happening, but then you realize there's more behind the curtain. You get to book two, and then book three, where you start to really see what the big picture, what's been going this whole time, what's been happening is. And for me, I just love books where you just delve in deeper. You get more lore, you get more history, you get more depth each book. And for me, the Coldfire trilogy absolutely accomplished this and just kept me really, really absorbed from start to finish with this whole thing. It's just there's so much that it did that I really enjoyed. Now, I will bring up because while I enjoyed the prose, I know there were some other people that were reading the first book that really did not care for the prose. It is not probably toward my kind of more normal sort of taste. Like it's definitely this isn't like the really like fancy or flowery or beautiful prose. But what Friedman did with the prose that I think also had a big part of what sucked me in is it's extremely atmospheric, and I think accomplishes what she's trying to accomplish with it. She does use a lot of short sentences, a lot of really interesting comparisons and way that she phrases things, but it is sort of this brusque thing. The one thing, too, I will note that I feel like would have irritated me in some novels, but makes sense here as well, too, because again, this is humanity, this is normal people, they're advanced, but there's some like just very plain language that typically would annoy me maybe more in fantasy. Like people say yeah a lot instead of like something else, and I know I've complained about things like that for other books. Here it kind of just fit and worked because of the fact that again it wasn't pure fantasy. You have normal like modern day or advanced things that still exist to to an extent, although things have changed. But so somebody that like the feeling is I think is not everybody works for. If you really are somebody who likes like the really like elevated prose, you're not really getting that here. But the what the prose accomplished for me was really making me feel this atmosphere even stronger. And the way it was written, it felt very consistent, and it felt really intentional with getting you to feel that thing. And atmospheric is the best way that I can describe this. I've read some other things where it's just very atmospheric, and Coldfire was that for me as well too, where I felt like I was really in this world and sucked into it and just digging in deeper and deeper and deeper. And again, I had a really fantastic time. I think this is a series that if you love interesting world building in general, like I'm not even getting other stuff. This is a fascinating one to check out. You like, gray characters, overall big ideas being explored. I think there's a lot of great stuff here too. And again, the dynamic between the two main characters also just worked so well for me too. I have seen I usually don't look at reviews until after I'm done with something and everything too, but I'm always curious what other people thought or if people agree or disagree with me. And I saw some hilarious reviews concerning the main characters and everything as well too. And so again, this is one. It seems like it's more of a mixed type of thing from a lot that I've seen, but this just worked really well for me. And in some ways, it's a little bit different from my normal taste because of some of like the writing style and the more atmospheric type of thing. And this is very non-traditional fantasy. It does some fantasy stuff, but it's very different. But it's the world building was so strong. The characters and the themes explored, I think, just worked really well, and it's something that just it appealed to so many parts of my taste that I wasn't really expecting. I knew this one had a fascinating premise, and so I was so interested, and it just really didn't disappoint for me. If that premise sounds interesting to you and you just want to delve into this world, a world that has magic, so to speak, and it's more like it's mysterious fey elements than just like actual like magic either too. And so it's kind of left like that, and like the clash of technologically advanced humanity coming there and slowly kind of losing the battle, but having to sort of find this middle ground so that they can live on this world. And the further you get in, the more lore on that you get, the more history, the more background, and I just every bit more made it even better for me. I love finding out more about these bits of histories, kind of like the real what's going on behind the scenes with this world. And the world itself is almost a character here because it's just these forces And as you continue again to dig in deeper, and there's just more things, and there are a couple of like rather big things that you find out even late in the last book as well. Just have me super fascinated to find out more, and I can't wait to read the prequel novella. And I have no idea if this author plans to write more in this world, but I will absolutely be reading it if she does. And I'm just so fascinated to check more out of C.S. Friedman, because this is something I still have a mass market paperback copy of Black Sun Rising for many years. And I tried it at one point and I was intrigued. And I just, for some reason, had never gotten to it. So I'm so happy that we have this as a part of Backlist Book Club. I have and definitely enjoyed more than I haven't with Backlist Book Club. This one, though, might be my favorite so far. I think of what we've done for it is just I had to read the rest of the series, and I'm so excited to find out more about this world with the prequel that I'll hopefully be getting to somewhat soon. And also just digging more into an author. And whenever I find a series that just impacts me and sticks with me like this one, I want to talk about it and share it too. So I would love to hear from you, those of you, whether or not you liked it, because like I said, I know there was a group of people reading this who did not care for it nearly as much as I did. So there's definitely differing opinions, but I'd love to hear from you, your thoughts on the first book of the series if you've read it, because it's just one I don't hear get talked about a whole lot, and I think it definitely should be talked about more, and more people should check it out, whether or not it ends up working for them. It is something that's just a great experience, I think, and worth checking out one way or another. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Would love to hear from you. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the links in the description, as always, for the Patreon if you want to support what I do, as well as the Wizard of the Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether these books, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun and we love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.